Communication satellites introduction since the dawn of the space age, humanity has dreamed of staying connected across the globe. Today, communication satellites orbit high above us, carrying our phone calls, TV shows, internet data, and even military signals. Without them, our modern world would be unrecognizable. In this video, we will explore the fascinating world of communication satellites, from pioneers like Elon to global giants like SES and Eutelsat, and the new internet constellations led by SpaceX's Starlink and OneWeb. Let's begin this journey into space technology that keeps us connected every single day. The origins of communication satellites. Before smartphones, before the internet, and even before international undersea cables connected the world, there was a dream that signals could be beamed across oceans and continents, not through wires, but through the skies. The story of communication satellites begins, not in a laboratory, but in the imagination of a science fiction writer. In 1945, the British author Arthur C. Clarke published an article describing the idea of placing satellites in orbit around Earth at just the right altitude where they could match Earth's rotation. This orbit, known today as geostationary orbit, would allow a satellite to hover over the same spot on Earth's surface. Clarke suggested that only 3 such satellites could cover the entire globe, enabling instant worldwide communication. At the time, this was considered science fiction, but it planted the seed of possibility. Fast forward to the early 1960s. During the height of the Cold War and the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union, scientists and engineers were racing not only to explore space, but also to use it for practical purposes. And one of the first great ambitions was to transmit television, radio, and telephone signals using satellites. In 1962, the world witnessed a breakthrough. Telstar 1, built by AT&T and launched by NASA. Telstar relayed the first live television broadcast between North America and Europe. For the very first time, people in Europe could watch live images from the United States, and Americans could see live broadcasts from across the Atlantic. It was a defining moment, proof that satellites could make the world feel smaller and more connected. Other experimental satellites quickly followed. SYNCOM-2, launched in 1963 by NASA, became the first satellite in geosynchronous orbit. This meant it could relay signals continuously, without the interruptions caused by low-orbit satellites passing overhead. In 1964, SYNCOM-3 went even further, broadcasting the Tokyo Olympic Games to viewers in the United States, a glimpse of the future of global television. These early satellites were small, crude by today's standards, and extremely expensive. But they showed the enormous potential of space-based communications. Governments, private companies, and international organizations saw the opportunity. Satellites could connect the entire planet in real time. The foundation had been laid. The dream of Arthur C. Clarke was becoming a reality, and soon, the world would witness the rise of the first true global communications network, Intelsat, the International Telecommunications Satellite Organization. But before we get there, it's important to remember, all of today's modern systems, from Starlink to OneWeb, trace their roots back to these early pioneers, the bold experiments that proved communication satellites could work. This was the beginning of a revolution, the origins of communication satellites, where science fiction became science fact. The global connector, After the success of the early experimental satellites, like Telstar and SYNC, the world quickly realized that space-based communications could not just be a scientific demonstration. They could become a true global service. But how could a single nation manage a technology that was meant to connect all nations? The answer came in 1964, when the world joined hands to create something entirely new. The International Telecommunications Satellite Organization. Founded as a cooperative of countries, Intelsat's mission was clear: to build and operate a global satellite system that would allow all nations, rich and poor, to participate in international communications. This was one of the first true international space partnerships, and its impact was enormous. In 1965, Intelsat launched its very first satellite, Intelsat I, nicknamed Early Bird. It was a small, barrel-shaped satellite weighing just 68 kilograms, but its impact was massive. Early Bird was placed into geosynchronous orbit over the Atlantic Ocean for the first time. Continuous and reliable communications between Europe and North America became possible. International phone calls no longer had to rely solely on undersea cables, and television broadcasts could be carried live across the ocean. Imagine the wonder of that era. People in Europe watching live events from the United States as they happened, or families separated by oceans hearing each other's voices without long delays or interruptions. Early Bird made history. It carried the first live coverage of a spacecraft splashdown, linking Apollo astronauts returning to Earth with audiences around the world. The success of Early Bird was only the beginning. Intelsat quickly launched a series of more powerful satellites, expanding coverage to other parts of the world. By the 1970s, Intelsat had satellites positioned over the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, creating a near-global communications web. For the first time in history, a call from Africa to Asia, or from South America to Europe, could be connected almost instantly. But Intelsat wasn't just about phone calls. It became a pioneer in global television broadcasting. Major world events were carried to billions of viewers thanks to Intelsat satellites, from the Olympic Games to breaking news stories. From royal weddings to concerts, Intelsat satellites delivered the images and voices of the world into living rooms everywhere. One of the most famous moments came in 1969, when Intelsat relayed the live broadcast of the Apollo 11 moon landing, as Neil Armstrong took his first steps on the lunar surface. Intelsat satellites carried those iconic words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," to hundreds of millions of viewers around the globe. Without Intelsat, that unifying moment in human history might never have been shared so widely. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Intelsat continued to expand, providing not just broadcast television, but also internet backbone services, airline communications, and emergency relief connectivity whenever disasters struck, whether earthquakes, floods, or conflicts. Intelsat satellites were often the first systems to restore communications for rescue teams and governments. Today, Intelsat operates one of the world's largest fleets of geostationary satellites, serving broadcasters, internet providers, airlines, ships, and governments. It delivers high-speed connectivity to aircraft flying across oceans, provides internet to rural and remote communities, and ensures governments have secure channels for diplomacy and defense. Intelsat's legacy is profound. It transformed communication from something that was once local and limited into something truly global. It helped shape our modern, interconnected world, where news, entertainment, and conversations can travel across continents in real time. When we look at the vast satellite constellations of today, Starlink, OneWeb, and others, it's easy to forget that their roots go back to It was Intelsat that proved satellites could become the backbone of global communication. It showed that space wasn't just about exploration, but about bringing humanity closer together. In many ways, Intelsat was the original global connector, a bridge across oceans, a symbol of cooperation among nations, and a demonstration of how space technology could directly improve life on Earth. The story of Intelsat reminds us of a simple truth. Technology is most powerful when it connects people, and with Intelsat's success, a new era of satellite communications was born, paving the way for companies like Eutelsat, and eventually, the new wave of low-orbit constellations we see today. **** SES satellites, the European giant while Intelsat was connecting the entire world. Europe had its own dream to bring satellite television directly into homes, without the need for massive ground stations or expensive infrastructure. This dream gave birth to SES, short for Société Européenne des Satellites, founded in 1985 in Luxembourg. SES began with a bold vision: to create a commercial satellite system that would broadcast television directly to viewers across Europe. At the time, most people thought it was too ambitious. Satellite TV was still a new concept, and skeptics doubted that ordinary families would install satellite dishes on their rooftops. But SES proved them wrong. In 1988, the company launched its very first satellite, Astra 1, positioned in geostationary orbit. Astra 1A carried signals from broadcasters and delivered them directly to homes. Almost overnight, satellite TV took off across Europe. Families who once had access to only a handful of channels suddenly had dozens, and the television industry was transformed. The Astra satellites became household names. Throughout the 1990s, SES expanded its Astra fleet, broadcasting hundreds of channels in multiple languages, reaching tens of millions of homes in Germany, the UK, France, Spain, and beyond. This was more than just entertainment. It was cultural exchange. As people gained access to international programming, music, sports, and news that transcended national borders. SES wasn't just about television, though. As the world moved toward the digital age, SES adapted. It expanded beyond broadcasting to provide data services, broadband internet, and enterprise communications. The company realized that satellites could be more than a tool for TV. They could become critical infrastructure for businesses, governments, and communities. One of SES's most innovative steps came with the creation of the O3B network, which stands for Other 3 Billion. This ambitious project, launched in the 2010s, targeted the 3 billion people around the world who lacked reliable internet access. Instead of using geostationary satellites, SES placed O3B satellites in medium Earth orbit. Why meow? Because satellites at this altitude orbit closer to Earth than geostationary satellites, which reduces the time it takes for signals to travel. The result, much lower latency and faster internet speeds, closer to what fiber optic cables can deliver. The O3B constellation provided broadband connectivity to remote islands, landlocked nations, and underserved regions, bringing schools, hospitals, and businesses online for the very first time. SES today operates a hybrid network of geostationary and medium Earth orbit satellites, making it one of the most versatile players in the industry. Its satellites provide everything from live broadcasting of major sporting events like the FIFA World Cup and the Olympics, to secure communications for governments and humanitarian organizations. SES satellites even power in-flight connectivity, allowing passengers on commercial airlines to browse the web, send emails, and stream videos while flying at 35,000 feet. Another strength of SES is its global reach. What began as a European venture is now a worldwide operation. SES serves markets in Asia, Africa, the Americas, and the Pacific. It partners with telecom companies, streaming platforms, and mobile operators to extend digital services to places where laying cables is impossible or too expensive. Through its history, SES has shown that satellites are not just about connecting cities, but about connecting people everywhere, from remote villages in Africa to fishing boats in the Pacific Ocean. SES also looks toward the future. The company continues to innovate with high-throughput satellites, advanced mega-constellations, and next-generation technologies that integrate seamlessly with 5G and cloud services. By combining geostationary stability with the speed of medium Earth orbit, SES is positioning itself at the heart of the digital transformation. The story of SES is more than a business success. It's about how one company helped reshape media, expand internet access, and prove that Europe could stand as a leader in global communications. From the launch of Astra 1A in 1988 to the O3b constellation today, SES has earned its place as a giant in the satellite world. If Intelsat was the pioneer that connected the globe, SES was the visionary that transformed how we consume media and share information. Together, they paved the way for the next generation of satellite companies like Starlink and OneWeb, who continue to push the boundaries of what communication satellites can do. Eutelsat, television from space. While Intelsat was building a global network and SES was revolutionizing direct-to-home television in Europe, another powerful player was rising. Eutelsat, founded in 1977 and headquartered in Paris, Eutelsat was established to serve Europe's growing need for satellite communications. Its full name, the European Telecommunications Satellite Organization, reflected its mission to bring connectivity, television, and broadcasting services to millions of people across the continent. Eutelsat's early focus was clear: television broadcasting. In the 1980s, Europe was experiencing a media boom. New private television stations were launching, cable systems were growing, and audiences were hungry for more content. Eutelsat satellites made it possible to deliver signals across national borders, reaching homes, cable providers, and broadcasters everywhere. One of the most important launches came in 1983, with the ECS-1 satellite, the European Communications Satellite. It carried TV and telephone traffic across the continent. But the real breakthrough came with the Hotbird series in the 1990s. The Hotbird satellites, positioned in geostationary orbit, became icons of European broadcasting. From a single orbital position, they delivered hundreds of television and radio channels to tens of millions of households. The name Hotbird became synonymous with satellite dishes across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Families would point their dishes to the Hotbird slot to unlock a world of channels, international news, sports, movies, and cultural programming. This ability to connect cultures was one of Eutelsat's greatest contributions. A family in Italy could watch programs from Egypt. A household in Turkey could follow French news. Communities in North Africa could access both local and European content. Eutelsat satellites didn't just broadcast television, they brought cultures closer together. But like SES, Eutelsat was not content with just TV. Over time, it expanded into broadband internet, enterprise services, and government communications. Its satellites began supporting airlines and shipping companies, rural broadband programs, and secure networks for military and emergency use. A key focus for Eutelsat was bridging the digital divide. In regions where laying fiber cables was too expensive or difficult, Eutelsat satellites provided internet access directly, for schools in remote African villages, for hospitals in mountainous areas, and for small businesses in isolated regions. Eutelsat became a lifeline to the digital world. Another important aspect of Eutelsat's story is its strong partnerships. Over the decades, it worked with broadcasters, telecom operators, and governments to ensure reliable service. For example, many African broadcasters rely on Eutelsat to deliver free-to-air television to millions of homes, supporting education and entertainment alike. Today, Eutelsat operates a large fleet of geostationary satellites positioned at key orbital slots. These cover Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and the Americas. Its satellites continue to broadcast thousands of television channels and provide high-speed data services worldwide. And now, Eutelsat is entering a new era, recognizing the shift toward low Earth orbit constellations. Eutelsat merged with OneWeb in 2023. This merger created a unique hybrid system combining the reach and reliability of geostationary satellites with the speed and low latency of low Earth orbit. Together, Eutelsat and OneWeb aim to offer seamless global connectivity for governments, businesses, and individuals. This strategic move shows that Eutelsat is not standing still. It's evolving with the industry, preparing for a future where geostationary giants and low-orbit constellations work side by side to keep the world connected. Eutelsat's journey, from the launch of ECS-1 to the Hot Bird satellites, and now to its partnership with OneWeb, is a story of adaptation and vision. It demonstrates how satellite technology can serve both entertainment and essential connectivity needs. In many ways, Eutelsat became the television bridge of Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. It shaped how millions of people access media, information, and culture. And now, it's helping shape the future of global broadband. If Intelsat gave us the first global network, and CES brought satellite TV into European homes, then Eutelsat ensured that television truly became an international, cultural phenomenon. Together, these giants laid the foundation for what was to come, the era of mega-constellations, with companies like Starlink and OneWeb aiming to cover every inch of the Earth. Starlink, SpaceX's internet revolution *. When we think about modern communication satellites, no name comes up more often than Starlink. The ambitious project launched by SpaceX, the private space company founded by Elon Musk. Starlink isn't just another satellite operator. It represents a revolution in how we think about connectivity, satellites, and the internet itself. For decades, satellite communications were dominated by large, expensive geostationary satellites. They provided television, backbone internet, and government services, but they had limitations: high costs, limited coverage, and high latency, because signals had to travel 36,000 kilometers into space and back. Starlink set out to change all of that. The idea was simple, yet groundbreaking. Instead of relying on a handful of big satellites far away in geostationary orbit, why not launch thousands of smaller satellites into low Earth orbit, or LEO, at altitudes between 300 and 1,200 kilometers? These satellites orbit much closer to Earth, which means signals travel faster, latency is lower, and internet speeds can rival or even surpass traditional ground-based networks. Starlink began its journey in 2015, when SpaceX announced plans for a global satellite internet constellation. The first prototype satellites were launched in 2018, and by 2019, the company had started deploying its operational satellites. Since then, SpaceX has launched satellites at an unprecedented pace, using its reusable Falcon 9 rockets to place dozens of satellites in orbit with each mission. By the mid-2020s, Starlink had already deployed thousands of satellites, making it the largest satellite constellation in history. The network quickly expanded to provide service across North America, Europe, parts of Asia, and then to nearly every corner of the globe. Remote villages in the Amazon rainforest, scientific stations in Antarctica, ships crossing the Pacific, and even airplanes flying over oceans, all began to connect through Starlink. So, how does Starlink work in practice? Customers receive a user terminal, often nicknamed the Dishy. This flat, phased array antenna automatically points itself to track the nearest satellites. The satellites then communicate with ground stations, or in some cases, directly with each other through laser inter-satellite links. This creates a flexible, resilient network capable of routing data across the globe at incredible speeds. One of Starlink's greatest strengths is its low latency. Traditional geostationary satellites often suffer from delays of 600 milliseconds or more. Starlink, thanks to its LEO placement, reduces latency to around 20 to 40 milliseconds, comparable to fiber optic internet. This makes applications like online gaming, video calls, and high-frequency financial trading possible over satellite for the first time. Starlink has had a huge real-world impact. In disaster zones where traditional infrastructure is destroyed, Starlink terminals can be quickly deployed to restore communications. After hurricanes, earthquakes, and wildfires, Starlink has been used to reconnect emergency services. During the war in Ukraine, Starlink became a lifeline, providing secure and resilient internet access when terrestrial networks were damaged or shut down. But Starlink's ambitions go beyond rural broadband and emergency services. SpaceX envisions a future where Starlink becomes a major part of the world's internet backbone. Already, airlines are equipping planes with Starlink terminals to offer high-speed Wi-Fi in the air. Shipping companies are using it to keep vessels connected at sea. Remote industries like mining and oil drilling are relying on it for operations and safety. Of course, such a bold project has also faced challenges and controversies. Astronomers raised concerns that the thousands of satellites would interfere with night sky observations, creating streaks in telescope images. SpaceX has responded by experimenting with darker coatings, sunshades, and orbital adjustments to reduce the impact. Another major concern is space debris. With thousands of satellites in orbit, the risk of collisions increases. SpaceX has designed Starlink satellites with autonomous collision avoidance systems and ensures that failed satellites are deorbited to burn up in Earth's atmosphere. Still, the sheer scale of the constellation has sparked debates about orbital crowding and the long-term sustainability of space. Despite the challenges, Starlink continues to grow. SpaceX plans to deploy tens of thousands of satellites, creating a truly global mesh network. Even more exciting, the company has announced plans to provide direct-to-smartphone connectivity. This means future Starlink satellites will connect directly with mobile phones, without the need for special dishes or terminals. If successful, this could revolutionize mobile communications, ensuring that no matter where you are on a mountain, in a desert, or in the middle of an ocean, your phone will still have a signal. Starlink is also playing a role in Mars colonization plans. Elon Musk has hinted that a version of Starlink could one day serve as the communication backbone for future Mars settlements, linking colonists on the red planet back to Earth. Whether or not we ever see a Martian Starlink, one thing is certain: this project has already transformed the satellite industry. It has forced competitors to rethink their strategies, inspired new constellations like Amazon's Project Kuiper, and accelerated innovation in satellite design, manufacturing, and launch. Starlink represents a new era of communication satellites, one defined not by a handful of geostationary giants, but by swarms of small, agile satellites working together in harmony. It shows that satellites are no longer just about television and telephone calls. They are about universal, high-speed, always-on internet access for everyone, everywhere. In just a few years, Starlink has gone from an ambitious idea to a global phenomenon. It has changed how we think about connectivity, reshaped the space industry, and brought the world a step closer to true global digital inclusion. From remote villages to bustling cities, from ships at sea to planes in the sky, Starlink is proving one thing: the internet of the future is not just underground in cables, it's above us, orbiting in the stars. OneWeb, a global competitor. While SpaceX's Starlink dominates the headlines with its another ambitious project has been quietly building a global network of its own. OneWeb. Founded in 2012. OneWeb's vision was straightforward but powerful: to provide affordable, high-speed internet access to everyone, everywhere. Like Starlink, OneWeb chose to use low Earth orbit satellites, recognizing that their lower altitude could deliver fast, low-latency service that traditional geostationary satellites simply could not match. From the very beginning, OneWeb set itself apart. Instead of focusing primarily on consumer markets, OneWeb's strategy leaned more toward governments, enterprises, schools, airlines, and rural communities. The goal was not only to connect individual households, but to support large-scale digital inclusion projects and critical infrastructure. The company's first launches, took place in 2019, and over the next few years, OneWeb steadily deployed satellites aboard Russian Soyuz rockets, and later, through partnerships with SpaceX and India's ISRO, after the Ukraine conflict disrupted Russian launches. By 2025, OneWeb had placed nearly 600 satellites into orbit, enough to provide global coverage. So, how does OneWeb compare to Starlink? Both operate in low Earth orbit, both aim to deliver high-speed broadband, and both promise to connect remote and underserved regions. But OneWeb's focus is a little different. Instead of shipping user terminals directly to consumers, OneWeb works closely with telecom operators, governments, airlines, and maritime companies. In other words, it provides the infrastructure that partners can then extend to end users. For example, OneWeb satellites are used to connect schools in remote African villages, to bring reliable communications to ships sailing across oceans, and to support military and disaster relief operations where terrestrial networks are unavailable. OneWeb also has a strong government backing. In 2020, after facing bankruptcy, the company was rescued by a joint investment from the UK government and India's Bharti Group. This not only saved the project, but gave it strategic importance, positioning OneWeb as a key player in national security, defense communications, and global digital inclusion. One of the most significant developments in OneWeb's journey came in 2023, when the company merged with Eutelsat. This created a unique hybrid model, combining Eutelsat's powerful geostationary satellites, ideal for broadcasting and wide area coverage, with OneWeb's low Earth orbit constellation, perfect for fast, low-latency broadband. Together, the merged entity could offer services that neither GEO nor LEO satellites could provide alone, a balance of global reach, resilience, and speed. This move also strengthened OneWeb's position against Starlink. Instead of competing head-to-head in the consumer market, OneWeb carved out a niche as a trusted provider for governments, regulated industries, and enterprises that require reliable, secure, and high-quality communications. OneWeb's technology is also evolving. Newer satellites are being designed with laser interlinks, allowing them to connect directly with one another, reducing dependence on ground stations. This makes the network more efficient and expands its coverage over oceans and polar regions. Like Starlink, OneWeb faces challenges. Launching and maintaining hundreds of satellites is extremely expensive. The company must continue to secure funding and partnerships to stay competitive. There are also concerns about orbital congestion and space debris, as thousands of new satellites from multiple operators crowd into low Earth orbit. Still, OneWeb remains a crucial player in the race for global connectivity. Its focus on enterprise, government, and educational markets makes it complementary to Starlink rather than a direct rival. Together, these systems are helping to reshape the future of the Internet, ensuring that no community, no matter how remote, is left behind. Looking ahead, OneWeb aims to expand its constellation, upgrade its satellites with more advanced technology, and deepen its partnerships with telecom providers around the world. In doing so, it hopes to fulfill its founding mission, to bridge the digital divide and bring modern connectivity to the billions who still live without it. In many ways, OneWeb represents a different philosophy of global connectivity, where Starlink charges ahead with rapid expansion and direct consumer services. OneWeb focuses on collaboration, integration, and reliability. Both approaches are valuable, and both are shaping the future of communication satellites. Together with giants like Intelsat, SES, and OneWeb is part of a broader story, a story of innovation, ambition, and the quest to connect every corner of the Earth. And while the competition in space is fierce, the outcome for humanity is clear: a world that is more connected, more informed, and more united than ever before. Asterisk, how communication satellites work. Asterisk, when you make a phone call, watch live television, or connect to the internet through a satellite dish. It's easy to forget just how complex the technology behind it really is. So, how do communication satellites actually work? At their core, communication satellites are nothing more than giant mirrors in the sky. They receive signals from Earth, amplify or process those signals, and then send them back down to another location on the planet. But behind this simple concept lies a remarkable combination of physics, engineering, and precision. The first key element is orbit. Communication satellites are placed in different orbits depending on their purpose. The most famous is the geostationary orbit, located about 36,000 kilometers above Earth's equator. At this altitude, a satellite orbits at the same speed that the Earth rotates. So to someone on the ground, it appears to hover in one fixed spot in the sky. This makes it perfect for broadcasting television, weather reporting, and global communications. In contrast, satellites like Starlink and OneWeb use low Earth orbit, only a few hundred kilometers above Earth. These satellites move quickly across the sky, completing an orbit in about 90 minutes. Because they're so close to Earth, they provide low latency signals, meaning there's very little delay, ideal for internet service, video calls, and online gaming. But since no single LEO satellite covers the whole Earth, hundreds or even thousands are needed to form a working constellation. The second element is the transponder. This is the heart of a communication satellite. A transponder is an electronic device that receives a signal from Earth, amplifies it, changes its frequency to avoid interference, and then beams it back down to the target area. Modern satellites carry dozens of these transponders, each capable of handling thousands of voice calls or gigabytes of data. Then comes the antennas. Satellites use large antennas to focus their signals onto specific regions of Earth. Some beams are global, covering entire continents, while others are spot beams, which concentrate on smaller areas to deliver higher capacity and efficiency. This is why your satellite dish at home needs to be pointed very precisely to capture the beam from the right satellite dot. Another critical aspect is frequency bands. Communication satellites transmit using radio waves, but not just any frequencies. Commonly used bands include C-band, Ku-band, Ko-band, and now Q, V-band for experimental systems. Each has advantages. C-band is less affected by rain and weather, but requires larger ground antennas. Ku-band is widely used for TV broadcasting, and broadband. Ka-band offers very high capacity for internet services, though it is more sensitive to weather. Satellites also need power, and since they orbit in space, they rely on the sun. Giant solar panels unfold once the satellite is in orbit, generating thousands of watts of electricity to run all systems. Batteries keep the satellite alive during eclipses, when Earth blocks. Sunlight. Navigation and orientation are equally important. A communication satellite must constantly stay in its exact orbital slot. Even a small drift could cause signal interference or loss of service. To maintain position, satellites are equipped with thrusters powered by chemical or electric propulsion. Small adjustments, known as station keeping, ensure that satellites stay locked in the right spot. One fascinating feature of modern satellites is inter-satellite links. In older designs, signals always had to pass through ground stations, but newer systems, like Starlink, allow satellites to talk directly to each other using laser communication. This creates a kind of space-based internet backbone, where data can travel around the planet without ever touching the ground until it reaches its destination, on Earth. Communication with satellites requires ground terminals. These range from massive dishes at teleport stations that manage global networks, to the small satellite dishes on rooftops. Two portable terminals used by journalists, explorers, or soldiers in the field. In the case of Starlink, user terminals are designed to automatically track satellites as they pass overhead, ensuring a continuous connection. Security is another crucial part of satellite operations. Since these systems carry sensitive data, from financial transactions to military communications, signals are encrypted, and access is tightly controlled. Some satellites even have anti-jamming technologies to resist interference in hostile environments. All of these systems work together seamlessly, often unnoticed by the billions of people who depend on them every day. The next time you watch live coverage of a football match happening on the other side of the world, or send an emergency message from a ship in the middle of the ocean, remember, your signal has traveled tens of thousands of kilometers into space and back again in less than a second. Communication. Satellites may be invisible to the naked eye, but they are among the most powerful tools humanity has ever created, silently orbiting above us, linking continents, bridging oceans, and weaving the world into one connected network. The impact on society and global connectivity. From the outside, satellites may look like silent machines drifting high above Earth, but their impact on our daily lives is profound. Communication satellites have not only reshaped how we talk to one another, but have also transformed how we learn, trade, govern, and even survive. Let's begin with the most obvious impact: global communication. Before satellites, international calls were expensive and unreliable, often routed through undersea cables that could easily be damaged. Today, communication satellites make it possible to speak with someone on the opposite side of the globe almost instantly. Whether it's a business meeting across continents, a live television interview, or simply a video call between family members, satellites have erased distance. Another major contribution lies in broadcasting and media. Television channels, radio networks, and live event coverage rely heavily on satellites. The Olympic Games, World Cup matches, breaking news, and concerts can be broadcast live to billions of viewers worldwide because satellites transmit signals across oceans and national borders. In many countries, satellite TV remains the most accessible source of entertainment and information. Satellites also play a vital role in education. Distance learning programs use satellite links to reach rural and underserved communities. In regions without stable internet or physical schools, students can still attend classes via satellite connections. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, communication satellites supported online education in areas where terrestrial internet was weak or non-existent. Healthcare has also been transformed. Telemedicine programs allow doctors to consult with patients in remote areas, share medical scans, and even guide surgeries from thousands of kilometers away. Satellites ensure that no village, no island, and no battlefield is beyond the reach of medical expertise. Economically, satellites power the global financial system. From stock exchanges to banking networks, millions of transactions flow through satellites every day. Without them, international trade, shipping, and e-commerce would grind to a halt. Farmers in developing countries use satellite connectivity to access weather data, market prices, and farming advice, giving them tools to improve their livelihoods. One of the most life-saving roles of communication satellites is in disaster management. When earthquakes, hurricanes, or floods strike, terrestrial networks often collapse. In such moments, satellites become the backbone of emergency communication. Rescue teams use satellite phones to coordinate. Aid organizations set up portable terminals to provide internet, and governments rely on satellites to broadcast emergency alerts. Countless lives have been saved because satellites kept communication alive when everything else failed. Satellites also strengthen national security. Military forces around the world depend on them for secure communication, navigation, and surveillance. From coordinating peacekeeping missions to enabling drone operations, satellites are deeply woven into the defense strategies of modern nations. But perhaps the most transformative impact of all is digital inclusion. Billions of people still live in areas where fiber optic cables and mobile towers do not reach. For them, satellites are the only path to joining the digital world. Projects like Starlink and OneWeb aim to bridge this divide, ensuring that children in the Himalayas, fishermen in the Pacific, or farmers in Africa can all access the same internet as someone in New York or Tokyo. This global connectivity has cultural implications too. Communication satellites have created a shared human experience. News, entertainment, social media, and education spread across borders instantly. Cultures mix, ideas circulate, and global movements are born. From climate change awareness to humanitarian campaigns, satellites give people a platform to unite beyond geography. Of course, the impact isn't purely positive. Satellites have raised concerns about cultural homogenization, where local traditions are overshadowed by global media. The sheer reach of satellite TV and internet also means misinformation and propaganda can spread more quickly than ever before. These challenges remind us that technology is a tool. Its benefits or harms depend on how humanity chooses to use it. Still, when we weigh the scales, the positive impact of communication satellites far outweighs the negatives. They have made the world smaller, faster, and more connected. They allow us to share knowledge instantly, respond to disasters effectively, and bring opportunity to places once left behind in just a few decades. Communication satellites have gone from being experimental machines to becoming the invisible backbone of modern civilization. They shape how nations interact, how economies function, and how individuals connect, and their influence will only grow as new constellations expand and technology evolves. Ultimately, the story of communication satellites is not just about machines orbiting Earth. It is about people who can now learn, heal, trade, and share across vast distances. It is about humanity stepping closer together, forging a world where borders matter less and connections matter more. The impact of communication satellites is everywhere, even if we don't see it. They are the silent bridges across oceans, the invisible threads binding societies, and the heartbeat of our connected world. Challenges and the future of communication satellites. As powerful and transformative as communication satellites are, their journey is not without challenges. These machines operate in one of the harshest environments imaginable, space, and face obstacles that will shape their future. The first major challenge is cost. Building, launching, and maintaining a satellite is incredibly expensive. A single large geostationary satellite can cost hundreds of millions of dollars, not including the price of the rocket to launch it. Even with new mass production techniques, constellations like Starlink and OneWeb require billions of dollars in investment. This raises questions: who pays for these systems? And how can operators make them affordable for the billions who need connectivity the most? Then comes the issue of space debris. Earth's orbit is becoming increasingly crowded. Thousands of satellites already circle the planet, and with mega-constellations deploying tens of thousands more, the risk of collisions grows. Even a small fragment of debris, traveling at thousands of kilometers per hour, can damage or destroy a satellite. The fear of a Kessler syndrome, a chain reaction of collisions that could make certain orbits unusable, is no longer science fiction. Operators now design satellites with self-deorbiting systems, but effective space traffic management is urgently needed. Another challenge is spectrum management. Satellites communicate using specific radio frequencies, but these bands are limited and highly regulated. With so many players entering the satellite industry, competition for spectrum is intense. Regulators must balance the needs of traditional operators, like Eutelsat and SES, with the demands of new all while preventing interference with terrestrial networks. Weather and environmental factors also pose problems. While satellites orbit above the atmosphere, the signals they transmit must pass through it. Heavy rain, snow, or storms can weaken signals, especially in higher frequency bands like co-band. Engineers are constantly working on ways to minimize this effect. But weather remains a stubborn obstacle. Security is another growing concern. As satellites carry sensitive data, they become targets for cyber attacks, signal jamming, and even physical threats. In recent years, some satellites have experienced attempted hacking or interference from hostile actors. The rise of space as a domain of competition, even warfare, means that protecting satellites has become a matter of national security. Beyond technical challenges, there are economic and ethical questions. Will the benefits of global satellite internet truly reach the poorest communities, or will it remain a luxury for wealthier nations? How can satellites balance profit with the moral responsibility of bridging the digital divide? These questions remain open as the industry expands. Despite these challenges, the future of communication satellites is exciting. New technologies are emerging that could transform the industry yet again. One innovation is the use of laser communication instead of radio waves. Satellites are beginning to use lasers to transmit data between each other and down to Earth. This allows for higher bandwidth, faster speeds, and more secure connections. Another promising field is small satellites and cubes. Instead of building massive, expensive spacecraft, companies are experimenting with swarms of tiny, low-cost satellites. These can be launched in large numbers, replaced quickly if they fail, and provide flexible coverage for specific regions. Artificial intelligence is also entering the picture. Future satellites may use AI for autonomous navigation, resource management, and interference avoidance. Imagine satellites that can repair themselves, optimize their signals and coordinate seamlessly with thousands of others. The integration of communication, satellites with 5G and 6G networks, is another frontier. In the future, your smartphone may switch seamlessly between terrestrial towers and satellites, giving you uninterrupted coverage whether you're in a city, on a mountain, or sailing in the middle of the ocean. There's also the possibility of expanding beyond Earth, as humanity returns to the Moon and sets its sights on Mars. Communication satellites will play a vital role in building interplanetary internet systems. The same technology that connects villages today could one day link colonies across the solar system. In the end, the challenges of communication satellites are significant, but they are also opportunities for innovation. Engineers, policymakers, and businesses are working together to ensure that space remains safe, sustainable, and accessible. The story of satellites is not just about machines in orbit. It is about humanity's drive to connect. Despite the risks, we continue to build, launch, and innovate because the benefits are simply too great to ignore. Looking ahead, communication satellites will not only shape how we connect on Earth, but may also define how we connect across the cosmos. The future is vast, uncertain, and filled with challenges, but also with endless possibility. Conclusion. The connected world of tomorrow. As we look back on the journey of communication satellites, it is clear that these machines are far more than just technology orbiting Earth. They are the silent enablers of our modern world, shaping the way we live, work, and connect. From the early days of Telstar and Intelsat, when the dream of global communication was still in its infancy, to the modern mega-constellations of Starlink and OneWeb, satellites have constantly redefined what is possible. They have bridged oceans, linked cultures, and brought voices, images, and ideas across vast distances in the blink of an eye. Today, billions of people benefit from their presence, often without realizing it. A farmer using weather forecasts, a student attending an online class, a doctor guiding a remote surgery, a family watching live news, or a rescue team responding after a disaster, all depend on communication satellites. They are the invisible infrastructure of our connected age, but their story is not finished. In fact, it is only just beginning. The challenges of space debris, security, affordability, and regulation remain. The need for responsible use of space has never been greater. Yet humanity's history shows that we do not shy away from challenges. We innovate, adapt, and push forward. The future promises even greater transformations. Laser networks, AI-driven satellites, seamless 6G integration, and interplanetary communication systems will redefine what it means to be connected. One day, the same technology that brings internet to a rural schoolhouse may also link human colonies on the Moon or Mars. In the end, communication satellites are more than engineering marvels. They are symbols of unity. They remind us that despite our borders and differences, we share a single sky. Every signal that travels to space and back is proof that humanity is capable of reaching beyond limits to bring itself closer. Together, as you listen to this story of satellites, imagine the world without them. No live international broadcasts, number global phone calls, no internet in remote places, no disaster coordination. Life as we know it would feel slower, smaller, and more isolated. With satellites, however, the world becomes vast, and deeply connected. And so, the legacy of communication satellites is not measured only in technology, but in what they allow us to do, to learn, to heal, to share, and to dream together. They are the silent bridges across the heavens, carrying the heartbeat of our civilization from one corner of Earth to another. The future is clear. A world, and perhaps one day, a solar system where no one is left behind, where every voice can be heard, and where distance is no longer a barrier. This is the story of communication satellites. The story of how we reached for the stars and discovered new ways to connect with each other here on Earth. And in that connection lies our greatest strength and our brightest future. Asterisk, the connected future asterisk. As we reach the end of this journey, one truth shines brighter than all others. Communication satellites are not just machines in space. They are lifelines on Earth, high above us. Thousands of satellites orbit silently, unseen by the human eye, yet shaping every aspect of our modern lives. They are the reason we can speak across continents, learn without boundaries, and respond when disaster strikes. They are the reason the world feels smaller, faster, and more united. But beyond the technology, beyond the science, there is a deeper story. It is the story of humanity's desire to connect, to share knowledge, to exchange ideas, to stay close to loved ones, no matter the distance. Communication satellites are the embodiment of that dream, yes. Challenges remain: space debris, sustainability, security, and equity of access. Yet, each challenge is also an opportunity. With innovation, cooperation, and responsibility, we can ensure that satellites continue to serve not just the privileged few, but all of humanity. And perhaps one day, these same systems will extend far beyond Earth, linking colonies on the Moon, outposts on Mars, and explorers across the solar system. The sky above us is no longer just empty space. It is becoming the great highway of human connection. So, the next time you make a call, stream a live event, or send a message across the globe, pause for a moment and look up. Somewhere, high above the clouds, a satellite is carrying your voice, your image, your story, across oceans, across borders, across the world. This is the legacy of communication satellites: to connect, to unite, and to remind us that no matter how far apart we may be, we all share the same sky, and in that shared sky lies not just technology, but hope, unity, and the promise of a connected future.